Welcome everybody. Tuesday, oh my gosh, the last Tuesday in January the 27th, 2026. I'm Karen Laws, the Ontario dog trainer, coming to you live from snow-packed Bethany, Ontario, Canada. We only had 25 centimeters of snow. We're in Toronto. They had twice that much. It's like blew their minds, more than ever in history. So today we're going to talk about canine fulfillment because holy smokes, how do you do that when you've got 25 centimeters of snow on the ground and more on the way apparently? I just heard there's more coming for tomorrow. So how many of you, before we get started, have downloaded the checklist for canine fulfillment? If you haven't and you want a copy of it, type work in the comments. If you checked earlier when we made the post, the trigger word was fulfillment. Either one will work. I just was more worried about people not being able to spell fulfillment because there can be a couple different ways to spell it. But we are going to talk about that because today, well not today, but this year, 2026, what I'm going to do today is share with you an answer. We're going to go through this checklist, and that's why I want you to have it, because I'm going to, through my story, you're going to be able to see where your dog fits. This isn't judgment. This is to help you understand that 20 minutes a day can make the difference between a fulfilled dog and a chaotic state of mind. And it doesn't have to be get dressed up and go to an obedience class. So many people, particularly in this time of year where I live, and even in general since the end of the pandemic and with everything that's going on in the world, people are stressed to the max. The last thing you want to do is go to a group class and get in a fight with your dog, you know, just pulling and tugging. Honestly, I'm going to share something between you and I. I've done group classes with my dogs way back in the day. And between you and I didn't much like them. Honestly, I didn't much like them because it was like constant. You always had somebody that had their dog on a flexi leash that was in your dog's face. I just hated them. So that was that. But I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to share my story and how I figured out this fulfillment formula. And it's not what you think. So before we get started, we've got Prince is right here. He's up close and personal today. His buddy Biker went home, so he's a little bit sad. Way back over there where the light is, if you look real close, you'll see Pippi. She's lying on her bed there. She's kind of buried in the paperwork. But Pippi went to the beauty parlor today and got her hair done. All right, so let me know where you're at if you've got like a ton of snow in your area and if it's freezing cold. I actually went out today, believe it or not, and I bought a coat. I bought a parka because I should show it to you. It's Mountain Equipment Co-op parka, but I'm freaking sick of freezing to death. I have a nice business, one of those 3-in-1 jackets that's logoed, but the arms are cold. And then the only other thing I had was an old floater coat that just isn't warm at all because the two parkas that I had, the zippers are gone in them. So, jeez. So, yeah, you're stuck outside. Yeah, we are. I'm thankful for my classroom because I can do still things in the classroom. I've managed to keep people kind of, away, stuck inside, keep people away a little bit, but nobody wants to come out in this weather and I live quite far away. So be sure to type work in the comments and get your copy of the checklist so we can go along through this together. I'm going to tell you my story. And so the answer to the one dog that shaped my understanding of the need for a dog to be fulfilled, and that it doesn't have to be these high-end things, although for the 20 years I was in competitive retriever training, I tell you, that's what it was. If they didn't get that drill work or that setup in the afternoon that simulated an actual field trial, they were antsy. They had to have that at least 4 days a week, and then the competition on the weekend with 1 day or 2 days of rest. And they thrived on it. We all thrived on it, but for a little while. And the answer to the question is, what's the one dog that I remember the most? Well, there really isn't one dog. But I didn't come into this business as a professional trainer. Like so many of you have probably met these people, and it used to be a trend. I haven't seen much of it lately. Jen, maybe you have, but I haven't seen much of this lately. But it used to be the sexy thing to say, well, I became a trainer because I had a dog that was a man-eater and I fixed him and now he's the best dog ever. Or I had a dog that was abused and she wouldn't trust anybody and I fixed her and now she's the best dog ever and I'm so busy. That's all bullshit, in my opinion. If I have to say that, then I'm not really not really as good as you might think. But I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that. That wasn't why I started into the world of dog training. I started it because I loved it. I had better conversations with four-legged creatures than I have ever had with two-legged creatures. Some of you that know me closer, you'd agree with that. But the thing is, there wasn't. they were all of my clients' dogs, but the one dog that shaped what I consider to be my ability to connect with dogs and talk dog was the first dog I had as a kid. I was raised with dogs all my life. My dad had hounds. Those dogs lived on chains and on all year long. And then on the weekends in the summer, we'd go to the cottage. Literally, they would jump in the trunk of the car in the summer, and we would go to the cottage. Of course, it wasn't 150 degrees like it is now. But then they'd run loose all week and then they'd come home. So I had nothing to do with them, but they still had that peace. You know, it was at the end of the week. So in between, it wasn't really a good time for them. But when I pestered and finally got my own dog, I got a black lab puppy, I had a responsibility. And what I learned, for one thing, I loved it. So I would get up in the morning, and did we go for an hour-long hike? No, because I was a little bit lazy as a kid. But I would go out every morning with that dog. We would go and we would walk around the block, and he would have his playtime in the yard and then his breakfast, and then he would go in his dog kennel for a rest because I had to go to school. As soon as I came home from school, I had to go get him. I changed my clothes. I go get him, and he's in his dog kennel outside, and he had to sit at the gate because the gate opened in, and he had to back. I taught him to back up, and he would back up just because that's how I needed him to be. I wasn't going to have him come and knock me over. It's just how, and I didn't yell at him. It was just waited. It just became a habit for all of us. And then we would go for a walk, and he learned to walk down the street beside me. And yes, initially it started on leash, but it was never a battle because I had lots of time. After all, I was like 12, 13 years old. And we got to the corner of the busy street. Our street was quiet. We get to the corner of the parallel busy street, and he had to sit at the curb and wait till I said, okay. And we walk across the road. I don't think I said, okay, whatever I said. Walk across the road, still walk beside me, go through the gate of the park. Then I said, okay, because okay was woohoo time. There was a huge open park, and it was actually a track for sulky horses. And sometimes horses were out and sometimes they weren't. But the point is, he would get to, I didn't need food. I didn't need toys. I didn't need any form of bribery. Where you go, Prince? And he knew that was his free time. He got to be a dog. He would pace with the horses sometimes. And then when it was time to come back, because the horses were going pretty steady pace, he would surge, and then he was fine. Then he was done. Then he would come back. We'd hang out together, and then we would leave. Same routine. Come back out the gate, sit at the curb. I look back and forth. Time to go. Let's go. Get to the other side. Okay, where you go? And he would just trot down the street beside me. Every day, every day, every day. And so my dad had hounds, and I learned about dog behavior with those hounds, watching them when we would go to a swamp with dogs that had been on a chain all week long, be let out to go hunt in a swamp, and Dad would just say, just wait. I would, Dad, they're going to run away. No, you'll be back. And sure enough, you'd hear the tonguing, they called it, the howling, and then the dog would start running, and I'd say, well, what's going to happen? He'd say, he'll come out in front, he'll bring us the rabbit, and sure enough, bring the rabbit, boom, shoot the rabbit, and the dog would just look at it, we'd pick it up, and then the dog was happy. That was his job. But my lab, back to the lab, so every day he was like, I got him as a puppy, and the times that I didn't do those things, because sometimes I was at school or I was going out with my friends after school and didn't give them enough. And I would come home, and I can remember coming home one night, my mother had a black eye, and it wasn't because, it was because she was playing with the dog. He hadn't had his walk. She was just trying to entertain him, and he jumped up and bumped her in the face because he hadn't had his routine. He was out of sorts. So fast forward to teenage years, first year university, so the dog was like 7, and I got in an accident. I couldn't walk the dog. My dad had to walk him. He goes outside. He asked me he didn't really ask me the instructions because he thought he knew everything. I'm just, I'm saying that to be polite. He thought he knew everything. So he takes him out, and he decides he's going to go up the street, and I said, you can just drop the leash. He'll walk beside you. That part he did believe. So he dropped the leash, and the dog took off. And my dad was a screamer. So he's yelling, screaming at him, and in a cursor, he's yelling and screaming at him, running down the street, because he could just picture him running straight out on this busy road and getting smacked by a car, and then he has to tell me that. So he's running after the dog, and of course, you know what happens when you chase a dog and you're screaming at him? He doesn't stop and turn around and go, oh, sorry. No, he goes faster. So remember, this dog had this routine with me: work in the morning, then rest, work, play in the evening, and then rest. Every day, every day, every day. And now all of a sudden, I'm not there. Does that matter? There's a brain pattern there. Dog runs up the street, hits the curb, skids to a stop, and sits down. And Dad's running up beside him out of breath. He just about had a heart attack. And the dog just waiting. Can we go now? And then when it was clear, away they went, and coming back, he knew the drill, so he got it right. The point was, the dog had already formed good habits. So as long as he trusted the person he was with, he knew how to work to his advantage. And did I do that hours and hours every day? No, it was like probably in the morning, maybe 10 minutes, and at night it was maybe 30 minutes at the most. So there's 40 minutes in the whole day. Habits. So when you look at the checklist, what that means, under number one work, fulfillment formula is simply a predictable routine that your dog understands, that they know they can count on happening in roughly the same way. That's the structure. At roughly the same time every day, they can count on it. So they are quite happy to rest. Prince, stop it. Go and lay down. This guy's had his thing, but he doesn't like the snow, so he's pestering. There he goes. He's just laid back down again. They want to know what's coming next, just like us. We don't go to work. If you have a job, an 8 to 5 job, and you go to work and you don't know what's happening, generally the night before you leave, you know what you're doing the next day. If you work on a factory, on a line, you know what's going to happen. It's the same stuff. So there's a certain mental comfort there, and dogs need the same thing. They thrive on predictability. So if you look at section 1 on the checklist, and if you haven't got that, type work in the comment, you get instant access to it. It doesn't mean formal obedience. It doesn't mean you have to get home and get that dog out to an obedience class. In fact, as puppies, I don't recommend that until they're, I find puppy classes chaotic. I don't know about any of you if you've ever been to one. I just find them too much chaos. So what it means is you come home and you intentionally be with your dog. You do something meaningful, because the dog's not sitting at home and waiting for you to come home to lay at your feet because you're tired. So if you look at number 1, it says, does your dog have a job they can predict? So what's a job? A job is simply a structured walk with some kind of a reward at the end that means play, sniff, dog stuff. Letting dogs be dogs. Doesn't mean you bribe them with food or have a toy, although that works. I never took a toy to the field with my lab. Never, when I was a kid. And I never took food. I didn't know anything about food. In fact, my whole field trial training career, which lasted almost 20 years, I didn't ever use food to get the dog to do something, ever. The reward was the work. They loved it. So we start to shape that as a puppy. And weather like this, if I had a lab puppy, and I actually miss my lab puppies, I don't even own a lab now, but I would be in a hallway or in the basement or in the here in my classroom, somewhere where the dog could get a grip, and I'd be tossing something down a narrow hallway, maybe on a string, and then guiding it back to me, and woohoo, play with the puppy. And I might do that for 5 minutes. That puppy is going to be exhausted. Then I'm going to put them in the crate so they can rest for a bit, and then I might get them out, take them for a pee, and they're not going to want to stay out long if you're in a cold area, and then come back in and just hang out. That's it. Do that 3 times a day. There's 15 minutes with your puppy, and he's mentally absorbed. So look in the first set of check marks, and for if your dog has a job they can predict, look at something that it tells you what it is. Look at something that you think your dog has, and if you can check off at least one, then you're golden. If you don't check off any, now you have a place to start. You have a framework, and this isn't about judgment. So it does something structured before you leave for the day, and that's so critical, because he has to have that outlet. Otherwise, he's just like this, like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with myself. And depending on the dog, of course. And so anything, he knows what comes next without guessing, because he knows when you come home, things are going to happen. And that doesn't mean you come home and you right away open the gate or open the door of the crate and let him burst out. No, he might know you've got to come in, get your duds changed, and away you go. And in the last one's key. You guide the activity. In other words, you walk up the street that's a perfect example of a structured walk to the park. Like people will say, I've got a park at the end of the street, and he pulls me there. Well, don't let him. Set aside 20 minutes. It might take you 15 minutes to get there the first time you're there, but once he realizes that I have to do that to get this, he'll get faster and faster. Because work creates clarity, it also calms the mind, so it reduces that angst, or even a lot of times separation anxiety. And the other thing is, if they don't have a job and you don't put them in a crate, they're going to figure themselves. And then when they come back from that little activity that's only 10 or 15 minutes, rest is important. And that doesn't mean that you've thrown the ball till your arm falls off and you just, my dad and I had this discussion about my first lab because he used to let him run. He used to run the snowmobile and make the dog run behind him. The old style trainers used to do what they call rode the dogs. They'd run them, they'd get their four-wheelers out. There we go. So Pippi's over there. She's had a busy day because she went to the groomer. Prince is finally laying back down. Can you see him? There he is. He's laying back down over there because he hasn't had much today, but he's had 3 sessions, walking, sniffing, playing a structured game, and learning how to go, not learning, but practicing some things that we always practice, and now he knows that's the end of the day. So the most important skill you can teach your dog is an off switch. It's not how to play, it's not how to get tired out, it's to teach them how to have a natural off switch. And in just about every one of my videos that you see when I'm in my classroom, I always have dogs there and they're always just kind of hanging out because they've learned to have an off switch. Dogs don't turn off naturally. They need to be taught. And the easiest way to teach them is to provide a predictable daily routine that includes work or structured walk as an example, rest because it follows work automatically, just like a coffee break, and then play with it, which is engagement with you. And that doesn't mean all morning you work, all afternoon you rest, and all evening you play, although it could, but it might mean 10 minutes of work, 2 hours of rest, 10 minutes of play with, throughout the day. And that's typical of a puppy, but then you can carry that forward as you go through. The important thing is the dog knows what to expect. They know when they need to rest, and they know when they're going to get engagement with you. Rest, in my view, is one of, and as I say, part of the off switch. It's the most important things you can teach them. But what about play? Does play strengthen your relationship with a dog, or does it compete? And if you wonder, if you're just joining us, type work in the comments and you'll get a copy of this checklist, and you can go through and check it off. If under the rest one, if your dog can lay down and stay settled while you move around, you're golden. And if he sleeps deeply at predictable times, that's good. And if they can be left alone in your house without chewing up the woodwork, even better. But if you can't check off any of those things, then you want to go back to point number 1, which is work, and figure out where the gap is and how you can come in and close that up. And then we come into the play part. And a lot of times, particularly with younger dogs or puppies, people go, well, I'm playing with him all day and he just won't tire out. Of course, because you haven't taught him that magic off switch. And they get like toddlers, overtired. And how many of you, type yes in the comments if you've had a dog that gets what we call the zoomies or the witching hour at about 7 o'clock, and they just zoom and zoom and zoom. That's usually a sign of overtiredness. I rarely get it here even with my board and train dogs, because by the end of the day they're going, oh my God, thank goodness I'm able to relax. I've had little puppies like 3 or 4 months old. At the end of the day I go, come on, we'll go out into the main part of the house. They go, no, I'm going in the crate. See ya. They just go in the crate by themselves and go to sleep. They go out for a pee and then that's it. It's exactly what they need. And it's not because they're, you have those dogs that don't turn off and so people will say, a lot of training I do for a part of a job can be treadmill training to build focus, but that doesn't mean you put the dog on the treadmill for 2 hours till he tires out, because then you're just building an athlete. And what does an athlete need? More practice. It also doesn't mean that you sit in the living room mindlessly looking at the TV while you throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. And the dog goes down the hall and back and down the hall and back. And then finally he just collapses and his tongue's hanging out. What have you created? A chaotic state of mind. You haven't created a dog that knows how to think and then knows how to turn that off and then come back in again. Just like us. Study for an exam, then you go and rest. So what I like to do with play, depending on what you're doing with the dog, I like to follow. For one thing, play is a resource. Leaders control resources. So that means leaders begin the game and leaders end the game. If you have a dog that's pestering you in the house, once again, doesn't have an off switch, and comes to you, throws a ball at you, or shoves a toy in your lap, and you get up and you start to play with it, the dog has just taken over leadership of the game. Similarly, on the other end, and this is really typical of retrieving, you get a retriever that's really hot or a puppy that's really anxious to go, so you just keep throwing it and he comes back. You throw it and he comes back, and you throw it and he comes back, and finally you throw it and he goes, screw you, go get it yourself. I'm not doing this anymore. He's just controlled the game because he's been responsible for turning it off. So what you want to do is you want to keep that play predictable. So they know they have to work first. Think of my example back with my dog as a kid. He knew he had to walk beside me up the street, and there was no struggle there. There was no fight. There was no anything. Once he understood, when he got to the corner, the good stuff happened across the way. He just had that one more step to make. It didn't take long. I mean, I don't even know. Because I did it every day. It didn't take long. It just was such a routine. We'd walk down the street, no leash, no anything. And he'd sit at the curb, and I'd look around, and away we go. It was like one of my fondest memories. So they just have to know that when play is going to happen. That's it. They don't even have to know how long it's going to last. They just know they're going to get it. Prince gets to play ball, but 10 times a day. In between, just a couple of little 5-minute drills here and there, sit at the door, all that sort of thing. So check the things that, you don't want. But where it says here, you shouldn't hijack your dog's nervous system. That's just throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. Dog doesn't know anything. Play can actually be work. When I was training retrievers for competition, I would do it this way. We would do what we call happy bumpers. And that wasn't a million happy bumpers, it was one. So the dog would come out, he knows he's going to work, and sometimes it was just a way to get his head in the game. It was like, yeah, good boy, good, yeah, hop, 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 hop. Throw the bumper, he goes and gets it, and he comes back, and I would sit him. And I still do this with my dogs. He gives me the toy, okay, we're done. Put the bumper away, go and do the work. Come back. Happy bumper at the end. If it's drill work, like if it's really taxing on their head, and they hate it, and it happens a lot in pet dog training. You want to teach the dog to walk at heel. I do a 3-step drill, and it gets thin pretty fast to the dog. So you want to hype him up. Yeah, good boy. And he knows if he sticks with that for 3 minutes, he's going to get the fun thing at the end. That's how you weave play into your work. Because playing actually is training. And when you do it that way, what ends up happening is the reward becomes the work. Particularly if you've got a working dog, like a herding dog, like a border collie or a shepherd or a retriever for sure. They don't care about food. They care about the work. The other thing is that, particularly with my Malinois, you want to make sure your play is not getting out of control, so that it becomes an obsession. And, I just can't shut him off. I had someone talk to me the other day about a 6.5-month-old lab puppy that would just use the leash as a toy. How many of you can relate to that? Leash as a toy. Tug, 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 and the owners are, stop it, stop it, stop it. That's a game to the dog. And then it becomes an obsession, and then pretty soon it's off the scale. That's the dog leading the play, and you don't want that. So check the boxes. When you look at play, it happens after work and not instead of it. And I'll be the first to admit right now, as a trainer, my dogs don't get enough what I would call structured work, particularly when it's minus 30 and there's 25 centimeters of snow on the ground. I am not going to town to do any structured heels. I'm not going to walk on the ice in my driveway to do any structured heels. I'm just not going to do it. But they have to go to place for dinner. They have to sit at the door till I say it's all right. And Prince is the same. If I offer him food or a liver, he'll take the ball. When I was training, I'll tell you this, when I was training retrievers, that's a great point, Jen, about keeper picking the ball over food any day. Keeper's a Malinois, for those of you that don't know. When I was training retrievers for competition, I had a dog, my first dog, of course, first dogitis. I overtrained him and I made a ton of mistakes. So he was over anxious online. He wouldn't sit beside me. He was always 6 feet out in front of me and he barked. So someone said, and I would travel hundreds of thousands of miles every year to get that dog worked. I would travel to South Carolina in the winter from Sudbury, Ontario, and home. That's way up north in case you don't know. And someone said, just give them wieners. Wieners work every time. And some of the trainers would use wieners to get what we call sticky dogs to let go of the duck because they're not going to let go of it. I remember he's way out in front and the trainer goes, give him a wiener. So I go give him a wiener, and he took the wiener and he looked at me, took the wiener, he goes, poof, and then he just looked out for the bird. Where's the bird? Where's the bird? Because that was his joy. So food didn't work. And to answer your question, Jen, yeah, Prince has to carry something all day. He has to have a ball in his mouth. He has to have something. If he doesn't, and in that sense, I'll let him choose. We start off, I give him the ball. If he spits it out, I don't make him go get it. But at the end of the walk, I'll ask him where it is. I can't say the word right now because he'll cue on it. I ask him where it is and he has to go find it. And I'll tell you what, that is the best game. And he comes back and I can praise him and he's all proud of himself because he creates his own job. But he does have to have something in his mouth, particularly when we've got little dogs around, because I don't want the little dog to be the thing that he carries in his mouth. All right. So the important thing about play is when it's over, and your dog can let it go. If he can't let it go, he's out of balance. You see Pippi's little head back there. There she is right there, tucked in behind her bed. All right. And that's the thing about Prince and his ball as an example. It really should. Dogs are natural problem solvers. Give them the opportunity. Go in your house and hide stuff. Label it. Whatever their favorite toy is. In our house for the Papillon, we have a little stuffy called her Pinky. And I'll go, where's your Pinky? And she'll go all over the house till she finds it, and then she comes strutting up with it. That's work, but it's also play. So you can work the two of them together. There isn't a black and white line. There isn't always a black and white line, put it that way. But what you don't want to have is the dog driving the play, calling the shots. You can structure it so that they focus on you because you're providing the predictability. That is the key. And it really, you want to have that play. It's got to build your relationship. It's same as working, just by being predictable and strengthening your bond. So let's get into the predictability part. Here you go. And it's a simple question. Does your dog know what tomorrow looks like? When I was a kid, without even realizing it, with my black lab Duffy, he knew what tomorrow was going to look like. Even though I was at school all day, Christ, I didn't even know what tomorrow was going to look like. But he did, because I knew when I came home, I had things to do with him. That was my job. He knew what he could expect. And even if it wasn't exactly the same, it was still that ability to think, that structured work, and then some free time and play, which, yes, had rules. So here was the rules for him were this. We were in a field where they practiced harness racing. And so the horses were practicing harness racing. And for him, it was entertainment to go and run with the horses. Because as he started to go towards them, I would call him, and the first few times he came back, and then he figured out in his head, if I just run along inside the fence, probably freaked out the drivers, but if I run along inside the fence, this is okay play. And the horses they would just go. So he would do that, and then he would just come back to me, and then we'd just hang out in the field. And then if he'd get a second wind, sometimes he'd go again, but generally he was never a problem. So the thing is, they need to know what's coming next. When I started to train my retrievers for competition, even my Malamute, when I left home, my old dog passed away just as I was finishing university. My lab, he passed away, and then I left home and I moved up north. And I was doing work in the bush, and I had lots of friends, lots going on, but I still had that gap. I could tell you why I got a dog, but I was young, so I had to get a dog so I could just put my feet in the ground. Oh my God, I was spiraling off the face of the earth. Thank God there was no drugs then, but not the problems there is up there now. But anyway, I got a dog because I needed the routine, and I knew if I'm a responsible pet owner, I transferred that responsibility for making sure his needs were met every day. Now, most days he came to work with me, and the days that he couldn't, he still knew what was coming as soon as I got home. And it was that predictability. He just knew what was coming. Was it high-end exercise? Hell no. I used to run every morning, but I didn't take him running because it was too much for him. But yeah, I was a bit of a rebel. But he knew I just taught him that routine. We go here, and then we come home, and then we go there. When it came time to shift into retriever training for competition, it was a no-brainer. Drill work in the morning, go and rest. I'm coming home at night. We're going to pack up, and away we go. We're going to do a little drill work in the yard, and then away we go. And they expected that. And then on the weekend, in the truck, down the highway to a competition. It was still the same thing, though, out in the morning for airing and so on. Predictable. They knew what was coming. They knew I was involved. They knew I was a leader. They knew that I had their back. They also knew that I had the structure that they could count on, not having to invent their own. So when you look at number 4, predictability, you don't have to entertain them all the time. You just have to be predictable. And if you're just joining us, type work in the comment and get your copy of this checklist and check off the things that apply. And if you have any sense of any of these numbers that are blank, you know where you've got work to do. And you want to be able to, that they know in the morning. And when I first came here to where I am now, I still worked. My dogs were left alone in kennels for 8 to 10 hours, never 6 hours, 8 to 10 hours. But they had their routine in the morning before I went. And as soon as I came home, they had their routine again. And then they had more. And really, surprisingly enough, by the end of the day, they were just like, okay, good. I'd come home, they'd be crazy, insane. I'd let them out of their kennels, they'd run around the yard, they'd do their business. I'd throw them some happy bumpers, then we'd go to work. We'd either do some obedience, healing drills, but generally I would go out, I have 100 acres here, I would go out in those days in the field and set up a big setup. Retriever training to do it right's a lot of work, but it was so much fun just to watch the dogs, and I had permanent stations set up and so on. But they knew they could predict that. So here's the shocker that I had. I just say walks happen daily, not occasionally. Meals are after the activity, not before. One of the things that makes me crazy is people saying, well, I get up in the morning, I feed the dog, I have my breakfast, I watch the news, and then maybe we'll go for a walk. By that time, the dog's like not happy. He's like, what's going on here? I am a predator. I am hardwired to work. I work for food, and I just got the reward before I did the job. It messes with their head deep down. So you want to be able to look at those boxes and see and make sure you can check off, preferably all of them, but at least one. If your dog doesn't know what's coming next, except that maybe you're leaving and they haven't been fulfilled, they haven't had a walk, they've gotten fed without having to work for it, and they're not quite sure when you're coming back, and you get all huggy and kissy and emotional when you leave, there's your recipe for separation anxiety. There's your recipe for anxious barking that we talked about last week. That's the recipe for chewed up woodwork in your house because your dog is not fulfilled. So we're already into 4 steps, and number 4 is predictability, and that's where it counts. So here's the thing that if you look at the reality check, and yes, I have to say, I'll true confessions here. ChatGPT helped me organize this because I was all over the map. When I shifted from competition training of retrievers to pet dog training, I used to I'll be honest with you, I asked the wrong question. So people would come to me, dogs pulling on leash, chewing up the house, couldn't relax at night, driving their owners nuts, and probably barking, inside or outside. So I would ask the wrong question. Here was the wrong question. How many walks a day did your dog get? And you would be surprised at the answer. I was stunned because I was, at that time, I've been in business 20 years. This is my 20th year. So I'm going back to year 1 to 4. I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, right? So if I told you you had to do something, you had to do it. I never asked why. I never built the relationship around it. And people started to say, well, none. I always let him out in the backyard. He gets plenty of exercise in the backyard. And then they would say, oh, I remember the first time someone said this to me, my jaw dropped. They said, 3 times a week. And it was a big dog. What? A week? How about 3 times a day? Oh, no, 3 times a week. We don't have time for that. And people would actually say to me, that's too much like work. So I had to learn to be a softer personality. Like, instead of saying, are you effing crazy? Like, don't you see what's going on here? I had to learn some skills, soft skills. Like, if you only walk 3 times a week, how would you feel? So I had to paint the picture, put them in the dog's head. So hence my tagline now is I teach people how to think like a dog. Because how would you feel if your dog only got walked 3 times a week? It's different if you've got a dog that's ancient. Even a puppy needs to be walked every day, not for hours and hours. 5 minutes is plenty for each puppy walk. 5 minutes, that's it. That's all you need. If you've got an old dog, our old guy now, he's 14, our little Havanese, he comes out, he gets walked 3 times a day religiously, and then he gets taken out for pees in between because he needs it. He's happy to come out for 5 minutes and go back in the house, and he's got the routine. He just walks out, he does this thing, he looks, he goes, I see you, I'm going back in the house, and he goes back to sleep. And puppies are the same. So these behaviors that people would come to me, the dog's pulling on leash, he's doing all these things. And when it drilled down to, if I said, how many walks a day are you getting? I got an answer that shocked me. So I changed the question. The question now to this day is this: describe for me a typical day for your dog. And if I'm on the phone, or even if I'm on a Zoom call, or I'm sitting with them, I'll have a notepad and it'll say, I'll put 3 columns: work, rest, play. And 9 times out of 10, there is nothing that shows up in the work column, and everything sometimes very little in the rest column, and a lot in the play column. And then you've got a dog that's in a chaotic state of mind all the time. And they bring them here, and they either, if they come for boarding and training, the dog within 4 days is different because I don't have to put up with their nonsense. They just learn the best advantage is to do this, and they know what's coming next. For the first 2 days, they don't know. So they're a little, disturbed, a little unsettled. Prince helps with that a lot, but to get them settled, but they're unsettled. But once they understand, even the dogs that are the most obnoxious, Lotto the Beagle was probably the most difficult crate dog I've had for a while, but even she knew that it's only for a little bit, and then she's coming back, and then we get out, and then we get to go do stuff. And now that was one session, and now she's beautiful. Here, look at Miss Pippi's getting up, and now she's fine. It's when they don't know what's coming next that all that anxiety happens. So the question is, and that's where I would start, say, describe for me a daily routine. And then when I get the answers, then we can come back and start to build what the picture should look like. And most of the time, people are now that I meet, and maybe the industry is evolving, but people will say, they didn't realize, I didn't realize that. Till you get them to start to think, well, what would you feel like if you had to do this? And it was just chaos. And I have had people say, well, our household's never predictable. And the dog's fine. But he's probably getting 5 or 6 walks a day because there's a bunch of kids and they all like to walk the dog. And they don't care if he pulls. They just want to go for a walk. And the dog's fine with that. That becomes his routine. So if you're just joining us, be sure to type work in the comments and get a copy of this. And this will help you build your roadmap to have a well-behaved dog without really training. Because this is a formula for fulfillment, that balance of work, rest, and play. And in the first column, you'll see what work really is. And it isn't about having a competition dog and entering in agility classes or retriever training or search and rescue. It's none of that. It's just predictability. That's something the dog can count on, that gets them to think, gets them to use their head. And because behavior, your dog is giving you feedback. It's information, like we talked about last week in the barking video. And if you haven't seen that, if you want to hear more about that, go into my YouTube channel at Ontario Dog Trainer, and you'll see the podcast there. It's up now. And you can also get the checklist for that, because we created a checklist for that. I think the word is barking. The word is the word's barking. Barking with purpose, because barking is feedback, and generally it's because something's not being met. It says unclear, unmanaged, and unmet, but generally it's because there's not a predictable daily routine. So the dog doesn't know what to expect. They don't know how to ask. They've got pent-up energy. They're frustrated. We get to go and drink or eat or binge watch something. They are just stuck in their own heads. They need predictability. So here's I put here the 20-minute rule, because so many people, and I know there's a lot of trainers on here that do this. You want to educate. The best client is one that calls you before they get the dog. And when they do, you can educate them. But if they've already got the dog and they're overwhelmed, when you want to really simplify it tricks trick training is awesome. And it can be a simple trick. I just teach Prince to catch a Frisbee or a ball. And so I like to teach, there's a few tricks I don't teach, but it's certainly, you want to give the dog something that gets in here. I have a mini called fungility court or a route in my classroom. It's perfect for this kind of weather. And I've had I've had clients here, older people, and the dog's just out of control. And they go, I can't control him. And I get them, and we build one object at a time. First, maybe is a tunnel. Then first is place. Then it's a tunnel. And then I have a walk. And then it's the tippy boards. And then it's a teeter. And then maybe it's a herding ball. And the focus that comes in the bond between the owner and the dog is what makes my heart sing. I have to say, it's what keeps me going every day. I can remember this one lady. This was quite a while ago. I don't even know if she's still here now, but it was a Bouvier that was just driving her nuts. And I got them on this agility course, and to watch, I can still remember her watching down at the dog and the dog looking at her, and they're just going through this course. And she didn't even know how long. They were like 10, 15 minutes. She didn't even know how long it was. And by then, the dog just sat down beside her, and she was glowing, because it's work, but it's still play, and everybody enjoys it. So, everybody, I'm going to do a bigger podcast on this, but if you're busy, you've got a job or you've got kids and you're running all over the place and you think, I don't have time to train the dog. If you have time to breathe and to go outside, you have time to train the dog. And that simply means make them way to the door. One of the best training scenarios is a busy mom. She's got no patience for the dog. And the dog better get over there and get out of the way. You sit right there. Don't you move. And dog goes, okay. Because now he's thinking, when can I get up? When can I get up? When can I get up? And then the kids go outside to play. You go, okay, bub, let's go. Boom, dog's happy. That's a job. And I have clients that come now who are retired, and they have dogs that are crazy out of their minds. And they'll say, we had dogs all the time when we had kids, and they were never like this. So I would ask them the question, what did a daily routine look like then? And they would go through all the things they had to do with the kids, and I'd say, where was the dog? Well, we would just make him get out of the way. He couldn't stay in the way. We wouldn't put him out. We wanted him in the house, but he'd have to go and sit on his mat, for example. That's work. And now they're retired. They felt all guilty about that. So now they over pamper the dog. They're following the dog. They're trying to cater to the dog and figure it out. Nope, just step up to the plate. So, if you've got, I had a client recently who has a gorgeous German Shepherd. And she had all these sexy things she was going to do with the dog. I'm going to teach him to be a protection dog. He's going to be a bite work dog. I'm going to do all these things. Okay, well, let's get him to do what you want him to. Let's get him to come to you first. And I said, so asked her the question, the magic question, what's a typical day look like? Well, I have to go to work in the morning. Okay, what time? 8:15. How far away is work? 15 minutes. Okay, what time do you get up in the morning? 6:30. What do you do from 6:30 to 7:30? Watch TV. No. You're going to put your boots on and you're going to walk that dog. And you're going to do something with him. Then you're going to come back in and put him in his crate to eat, whatever, and go have whatever. Get ready. 15 minutes. And if that doesn't work, then get up 15 minutes earlier. And I'm saying that to all of you watching this. And remember, type work in the comments if you want a copy of this list, because that's what it takes. An extra 15 minutes in the morning. If you can't get by your day without coffee, put your coffee in a travel mug. Stick your phone in your pocket so you're not doing this and this while you're walking the dog, so that you can connect with the dog and still have your coffee while you're out together. Then you come back and go through your morning routine. The dog's quite happy. Their needs have been met. And then when you come home, you do the same thing, because remember, the dog's not waiting for you at home with bated breath so they can lay at your feet because you're tired. So the second part of that conversation was, okay, what time do you get home? And then what happens? Well, I get home at 5:30, and then I usually get the dog out about 6:30. He gets out of his crate, and he's just so crazy, I just don't take him till 6:30. Excuse me? So tell me between 5:30 and 6:30, well, I'm tired when I come home. Now, this is a 20-something, so I'm tired. My knees hurt. I'm tired. I said, yeah, well, you know what? The dog doesn't give a shit about that. The dog needs exercise. So before you sit down, literally, I speak from experience here, because once you sit down after a day at work, you just want to not get up. Before you sit down, change your shoes, put your dog walking shoes on, and get going. And she did that, to her credit. And then you can come home and relax. And so far, so good. The dog's fine. How long they stick with that? Like my routine with that, when people say, how long do I have to do this? Well, how about forever? But at a minimum, how about for the next 30 days? Because it takes 3 weeks to develop a habit, 6 weeks to maintain a habit, and 6 months to change a state of mind. But start with one step, because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. But what you find if you keep doing it, you want to keep doing it. You want to keep doing that extra 15 minutes in the morning and doing that extra 15 minutes at night. Trust me, I learned this at 12 years old, and I'm a little older than that now. And it feels weird to me when I get up in the morning if I don't have a dog to walk. I couldn't live here with dogs and not do that. And that's why I'm a strong advocate for seniors having pets, and I do whatever I can to help them, because it gets people moving. But you want to do something that constitutes work and some form of play, but certainly some form of work in the morning before you leave the house, if you have to leave the house, even if you don't, and first thing in the morning, and then later in the afternoon. And if you're a stay-at-home type person, something in midday. And in between, the dog can rest. It's as simple as that, when they can predict it. So that's it. Those are small actions until they become habits. And that's what you're creating, is that habit. That thing that when you stop doing it, it feels weird. It feels like you've missed something. That's why they don't know what's coming next. They don't know what to expect. And within the first week they're here, they're calm, they're easy to manipulate, manage, and they're looking to learn. Because once they trust you, once their mind is calm, they'll learn. All right. I talked on and on. Let's have some questions. I'm not seeing any questions because I haven't stopped talking. Be sure to type work in the comments if you want a copy of this checklist, and feel free if you have a question to book a call with me. You know, I do 15 minutes to assess, and then if you want more than that, then we have all kinds of packages where I can guide you through this virtually. If you want to come to my facility, you're more than welcome to do that, but I have all kinds of virtual coaching programs, start from as little as 1 month to a year, whatever you want. And I have tons of resources that I share if you want to know how to do specific things, everything from retriever training to just walk your dog on a leash. But more importantly, I'm always there as a resource to talk with you about why your dog is doing what they're doing. So you can check that out in my bio if you want, or you can simply DM me and say, how do I book a call? And we'll take care of it. Because good routines, they take work. They don't happen by accident. Sometimes they do. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have to say that happened not by accident, by design, because I had no siblings, by the way, so it was me, and I had very strict parents. So if I dropped the ball, man, I heard about it for like ever. And so it was not an option. The dog came first, and to this day, my dogs still come first because I know what their needs are. And when the dogs come first, they're so easy to satisfy. They're much easier than humans. They don't talk back, and they're always up for doing something. They want to do what you want to do. They don't question you. They don't say, are you crazy? Well, sometimes they do, but it's because they want clarity. If your dog's not doing what you want, particularly if you've got a highly intelligent problem-solving dog like a Border Collie or an Aussie Shepherd or a Malinois or a German Shepherd or a Lab, they're going, are you sure about this? My first field trial lab, oh my God, he was so much fun. He was wild as hell because that was my fault. That was the one that spit the wieners out. And I remember saying to one of the judges, saying, man, you know what? If that dog could just figure out my mistakes, we'd be golden. And then the dog won the trial, and he looked at me and go, I think he just did. Because I would do something, I'd ask him to do something, and I could see the wheels turning. He'd go, the thing's not over there, it's over here. And he would go pick up the bird and come in. So when you've got that kind of relationship, and they can predict every day what's going to happen, it's like magic. It's the miracle of dogs. So tap on the screen if you got something out of this, if it was helpful. If you've got a question, please let me know your question. If you want a copy of this checklist, type work in the comments. And if you want to get together, by all means, I have online programs called Dog Owner to Dog Leader that teaches you how to do all of this stuff. And it's all laid out in modules, but there's also personal coaching involved. There's also group community involved to ask questions and talk to each other. And you can click that link in my bio if you want to know more. We're at 5 minutes left. Let's hear your questions. Thanks everybody for listening to me, by the way. And like I say, if you got something out of this, just tap on the screen. If you got questions, type them in the comments. I've got my assistant here standing by, and she's probably wondering why she's here because I never stop talking. But I'm really happy to see everybody here. I recognize some names if I didn't catch you on the way by. I hope everybody is warm. Okay. No questions. Does that mean that I talked till you went numb, or it was so thorough that you don't have any questions, or it made no sense to you? So be sure to type work in the comments so you can get access to the checklist. And it does lay it out for you. It's only like work, rest, play, 3 steps, and then repeat 4. Be predictable. Give your dogs need jobs. That's just a common thing. But the important thing is to understand what a job is. It isn't about you having to become an agility mom or an agility dad. It is giving your dog something to think about, a problem to solve. You don't have to be that one. Like I was married to competitive retriever training for 20 years. I loved every minute of it. I miss it now, but I will never go back to it because I know how much work it takes to succeed. And I was a woman in a man's world in those days. And I had multiple field trial champions when other people could still scratching their head trying to figure out how to get the dog to pick up a bird. I didn't care about that. It was just me and the dogs. But once it sort of got away from that, I just know how difficult it is. Can you comment on good jobs for specific standard schnauzer? Standard schnauzers are guard dogs. I would teach a schnauzer how to play tug. That's a little bit of a game, but it's also work because they have to let go. They have to sit, maybe send into place. You can also do nose work with schnauzers, and you can do a really good game to play that's work for a schnauzer. I know they do barn hunts with them, but you could set up some kind of scent work, put scent boxes around, or teach them to go and find something. That's really good work for schnauzers. That's a great question. Thank you. Remember to type work in the comments. This campaign will stay active, and I'll also be putting this over on my podcast. This whole episode will be repurposed and put over on my podcast on the YouTube channel, Ontario Dog Trainer. And I will also be doing a lot more detail. I'll do another full podcast, a lot more detail, although this one actually was pretty thorough because nobody interrupted me with questions. I hope that's okay, because I do like asking questions. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll see all of you back here next week. Same time, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay warm, and remember, training time is all the time. Work, rest, play for fulfillment. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.